I never imagined that love could turn into poison, until the night I watched my husband being carried out of our house, half naked, glued to another woman, and the firefighters. One of them was his own son. It all started with a smell, a soft trace of perfume that didn't belong to me, lingering on his shirt like a confession whispered in roses. That scent. It was called Lily Bloom, the same name as my daughter. The same name that would soon destroy everything I thought was real. Frank and I had built what looked like a peaceful life, a little flower shop by the coast, a porch filled with laughter and sunsets. But peace can be the quietest disguise for betrayal. Behind every good morning, sweetheart, there was a lie so deep it could drown a soul. When I finally discovered the truth, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I planned. Some women burn their cheating husband's clothes, some throw them out. Replaced a small bottle in his drawer, a swap so simple, yet it would set our entire town on fire. And when the firefighters came, when I saw the flashing red lights painting the night outside my window, I knew justice had a scent of its own. It smelled like glue and roses. But here's the thing. What happened that night was only the beginning. Because hidden beneath that scandal was a secret even darker. Something no one, not even I, was prepared to face. And before this story ends, you'll see that the glue wasn't the cruelest part of my revenge. It was what came after. So, my dear listener, if you've ever trusted someone who tore your heart apart, if you've ever wanted justice served cold, this story is for you. Make sure to subscribe and keep the bell on, because life has a strange way of rewarding those who stay until the very end, and who knows? The truth waiting at the end of this story might just change the way you look at love. Forever. Now let me take you back. To the night it all began. It started on an ordinary morning, the kind that smells like fresh coffee and quiet. Routines. The kind of morning where you believe life is still normal. Frank was humming in the kitchen. The same low tune he always did before work. He looked calm. Almost too calm. He kissed me on the cheek, said he'd be home late, something about a meeting at the harbour, and left with that easy smile I'd once fallen in love with. When the door closed, silence filled the house, and that's when I smelled it. A faint, floral fragrance drifting from his jacket, hanging over the chair. Not my scent, not anything I owned. It was delicate, young, almost innocent. But it didn't belong here. I picked up the jacket and pressed it to my face, hoping I was wrong. But the name on the tag of the perfume bottle I found in the pocket told me otherwise. Lily Bloom. My breath caught. Lily, my daughter's name. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, just a name. But in that small town of ours, coincidences don't come often, and they never smell like guilt. I tried to shake it off. I really did. But as I walked into the bedroom, something else stopped me cold. A small receipt left on his nightstand, a luxury spa downtown, a couple's treatment. 2 names scribbled under special request, and one of them was Frank's. The other name had been smudged, almost as if wiped away. I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers trembling against the paper. For 40 years, I'd been the one who kept everything together. Birthdays, bills, dreams, disasters, and all of it. But that morning, with a simple piece of paper in my hand, I felt something inside me come undone. Later that day, I went to the flower shop. I tried to distract myself by arranging lilies, white lilies. Ironically, but the scent only reminded me of that perfume again. Every petal felt like a cruel whisper, every breath smelled like betrayal. My friend Helen stopped by for her usual roses. She noticed I was quiet. "You look pale, Maggie. You okay?" I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. "Just tired," I said. but I could tell she didn't believe me. She leaned closer and said softly, "Don't ignore what your heart is trying to tell you, sweetheart. Women like us, we always know." That night when Frank came home, I studied him, the way his tie was loosened, the faint red mark on his neck, the new energy in his step. He looked like a man in love, but not with me. At dinner, he told me stories about a new business partner, someone who was helping him expand. His eyes shone a little too bright. His laughter came a little too easy. Every word felt rehearsed. "Who's your new partner?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Oh, just someone helping with the marketing. A younger mind, you know." He winked like it was a joke I'd enjoy, but my stomach tightened. After he went to bed, I quietly gathered his clothes for laundry. Inside his pocket, I found another clue, a lipstick-stained napkin, smelling of the same lily bloom perfume. The stain was deep crimson, like the colour of fresh roses. I stared at it for a long moment, then folded it neatly and placed it in a small box. I didn't know what I would do with it yet, but something in me whispered that I'd need proof. Before turning off the lights, I stood by the window, looking out at the ocean beyond our street. The waves were calm that night, but I could feel a storm rising inside me. They say betrayal doesn't happen in one moment, it happens quietly. One forgotten dinner, one careless text, one unfamiliar scent on a jacket. And yet when it finally hits you, it crashes like thunder. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there listening to Frank's soft snoring beside me, wondering what face he wore when he slept next to her. My hand rested on the blanket, just inches from the man I no longer recognized. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. I was going to know, truly know. No guesses, no assumptions, because the only thing worse than being lied to is realizing you helped build the lie. As the first light crept through the curtains, I reached for my phone and scrolled to an old number, a retired detective, a man who once helped me when the shop was robbed years ago. His name was Harold. He answered on the second ring. "Harold, it's Maggie," I said quietly. "I think my husband's hiding something. Can you find out what it is?" There was a pause, then his voice low and calm. "Tell me everything you've seen." I told him about the perfume, the napkin, the spa receipt. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he said just one thing. "I'll get you the truth, Maggie. But are you sure you're ready for it?" I didn't answer right away. I looked down at the small box holding that lipstick napkin and whispered, "More than ever." But deep inside, I had no idea how cruel that truth would be, because the name Lily Bloom was about to mean something I could never forgive. By the time Harold confirmed what I already feared, my hands had stopped shaking. Fear had turned into something colder, something sharper. He had sent me photos, Frank and Lily together, my husband and my daughter, in a restaurant, at a hotel, walking too close, smiling too softly, the kind of smile you only share when you think no one else in the world can see you. I didn't cry when I saw them. The tears had dried long before. What replaced them was silence. A silence so deep it hummed inside my bones. For days, I moved like a shadow, opened the flower shop, arranged roses, smiled at customers, and waited for the moment. I'd stop being a victim and start being something else. It came on a Thursday. Frank had left early. For his business trip, I knew he wasn't going to work. He was meeting her again. The proof was already in. Harold's messages, same hotel, same room, so I went to our bedroom. The afternoon light was soft, golden, the kind of light that makes lies look almost beautiful. On Frank's nightstand, the drawer was slightly open. Inside, His favourite bottle of lotion, the one he carried everywhere, Hydra Silk. A name that made me laugh now. Hydra. Smooth. Perfect. Exactly what he thought his secret was. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it. The idea came quietly, like a whisper in the back of my mind. A whisper that said, "Make it fit the crime." Downstairs in the supply closet, I kept a small tube of clear industrial adhesive. We used it in the shop to fix broken vases. Strong, invisible, permanent. I held it in my hands, feeling its weight. Something inside me, the same instinct that once kept my marriage alive, now told me to act. I took Frank's lotion bottle and carefully emptied it into the sink. Then I cleaned it, dried it, and slowly poured the glue inside, thick, clear, deadly quiet. It looked exactly the same. When I screwed the cap back on, I whispered to myself, "Let's see how smooth things stay now." I put everything back exactly as it was. Every crease in the bedsheet, every detail untouched. Then, I turned to the small camera Harold had given me. He called it the little eye. I placed it on the shelf, behind a picture frame pointed at the bed. It was tiny, silent, and waiting as like me, that evening. I told Frank I had been invited to a floral exhibition in Bangor. He looked surprised for a moment, then relieved. He didn't even ask who I was going with. He just said, "Take your time, honey. You deserve it." The words tasted like rust in my mouth. I packed a small bag, kissed him on the cheek, a gesture I had perfected over the years, and left the house. But I didn't go far. Across the street, Mrs. Cole's window faced mine. She was one of those quiet neighbours who never asked too many questions. When she saw my face, pale and tight, she didn't say a word, just nodded, handed me a cup of tea and opened the curtain. From her living room, I could see straight into my own house, the glow of the lamps, the outline of the bed through the half-drawn curtains. It felt surreal, watching my life from the outside, like a scene from someone else's movie. Hours passed, the sun went down, streetlights blinked on one by one, and then a car pulled into the driveway, Frank's silver sedan. He stepped out first, checking the street like a guilty man. Then the passenger door opened. Lily, even from across the street, I could see the way she touched his arm, the way she laughed quietly, the way he leaned in, the way they didn't look like father and daughter anymore. I felt my stomach twist, but I didn't cry. Instead, I opened the app Harold had installed on my phone, the one connected to the hidden camera. One tap, and the live feed filled the screen. They went straight to the bedroom, no hesitation, no shame. I watched them move across the room, heard faint laughter through the audio feed, then the sound of the drawer opening, the familiar click of the lotion cap. My breath froze. I couldn't look away. Seconds later, a small sound, a startled gasp, then a curse, then chaos. Lily's voice rose, high-pitched, panicked. "Frank! What's happening?" Frank's voice lower, furious. "Don't move. Don't, damn it, we're stuck." I set my tea down on Mrs. Cole's table, my hand steady for the first time in months. Through the window, I could see the bedroom lights flicker. I didn't need to see the rest. I already knew. They were trapped, exactly as they had trapped me in their lies. Mrs. Cole turned toward me, eyes wide. Maggie. "Is that smoke?" I followed her gaze. A thin line of grey was curling out of my kitchen window, right on time. Earlier that evening, before leaving, I had left a small pan of oil on the stove, just warm enough to smoke when the timer I set would trigger. Not a fire, just enough to draw attention, enough to bring an audience. I picked up my phone and whispered, "It's showtime." Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens echoed down the street, flashing red lights reflected in Mrs. Cole's window. Frank's house, my house, became the centre of the town's attention. And somewhere inside, the two of them were learning what it felt like to be bound together by their own choices. I didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Because sometimes, revenge doesn't need screaming or violence. Sometimes it just needs a quiet plan, a steady hand, and the perfect moment to let it bloom. The sirens came faster than I thought. Their red lights flickered against the windows, painting my walls with a colour I'd never seen before, a mixture of warning and satisfaction. I stood behind Mrs. Cole's curtain, watching firefighters rush out of the truck. One of them, tall and broad-shouldered, caught my eye immediately. Eddie Frank's son. My breath caught in my throat. The universe, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humour. Eddie had always been kind to me. He was nothing like his father, quiet, steady, loyal. He'd helped me fix the roof last winter, brought me flowers from the station garden, and always called me Miss Maggie with a smile. And now, here he was, racing to save the man who had betrayed me. The smoke was doing its job, thick enough to cause panic, but harmless enough not to destroy anything. Neighbours started gathering in their front yards, shouting, pointing, "Call the fire department!" Someone yelled, "They're already here!" Another replied. Inside my house, our house, I could hear chaos through the live feed on my phone. Furniture moving, voices screaming, Lily's panic cracked through the static. "Frank! I can't move! What's happening?" And Frank, breathless, furious, "Stop yelling, damn it! It's burning! Wait, my skin, we're stuck!" Mrs. Cole gasped beside me, her hand flying to her mouth. "Maggie, dear God, what's going on in there?" I didn't answer. I just kept watching. Eddie and his team reached the front door, one hit with the axe, and the lock gave way. Smoke rolled out like a living thing, curling into the cold night air. I could see the flashlights moving through the hallway, hear the muffled orders, "Check every room. Kitchen's clear, small oil fire, nothing major." Then, from the live feed, a single voice broke through. "Eddie's. Dad, are you in here?" The sound of those words. It felt like a knife twisting through me. He didn't know yet, didn't know what he was about to see. The camera caught the moment the bedroom door burst open. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Eddie's flashlight stopped mid-air. The beam fell on them, Frank and Lily, half naked, glued together in a tangle of shame and pain. Frank tried to shout something, but his voice broke under the weight of it all. Lily sobbed uncontrollably, covering her face, as if the darkness could undo what was already seen. The other firefighters stood frozen in the doorway, their faces a mixture of disbelief and disgust. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Another stifled a laugh before Eddie snapped, "Quiet! Everyone out now!" He turned back to his father, his voice shaking. "Dad, what did you do?" Frank didn't answer. He just hung his head, his face red, sweaty, humiliated. "Get us out of here," he whispered hoarsely. "Please, son." But Eddie didn't move. He just stared. A long, unbearable silence filled the room, the kind that splits families apart. Then he stepped back, his voice steady but cold. "Get the medics. They'll handle it." Outside, the neighbours had gathered in clusters, eyes wide, phones out, whispers cut through the night like blades. "What happened? Is that Maggie's husband?" "Who's the woman?" Someone gasped. "Is that her daughter?" The truth was spreading faster than the smoke. I stepped away from the window, my heart heavy but strangely calm. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, painful, inevitable. Through the open window, I could still hear Lily crying, "Please, it hurts. Do something!" and Frank shouting, "Don't let them see us. Cover us up!" But it was too late. Every light in the neighbourhood was on. Every pair of eyes was watching. The firefighters wrapped them in sheets, tried to separate them carefully, but the glue held strong. Even as they carried them out on stretchers, you could see the shame, raw, permanent. Clinging tighter than any adhesive could, Mrs. Cole whispered beside me, "Maggie, you knew, didn't you?" I turned to her slowly, met her gaze and said nothing, just gave a small, tired smile. When the ambulance doors closed, the sound of sirens faded into the night. The crowd began to disperse, but the whispers lingered, buzzing through the air like flies over something rotten. Across the street, Eddie stood alone in the yard, his helmet off, his eyes dark. He looked at the house, at our house, as if he no longer recognized it. Then he looked up, and for a moment, our eyes met across the distance. He didn't need to ask, he already knew. And in that silent exchange, something broke, not between us but around us. The illusion, the lie. When I finally left Mrs. Cole's house, the street was empty, the windows of my home were shattered, the curtains blackened with smoke, but I didn't feel loss. I felt release. The glue would wash away, the burns would heal, but the truth would never fade. As I walked up the driveway, the wind carried the faint scent of lilies again, only this time it didn't smell sweet. It smelled clean. That night, for the first time in months, I slept, and in my dreams, I heard the faint sound of sirens fading into peace. Because sometimes, the fire that wasn't real is the one that finally burns everything false away. Morning came with a strange stillness, the kind of silence that follows a storm. Even the ocean outside my window sounded tired, as if it too had witnessed enough. By then, everyone in town knew. The story had spread overnight, whispered in diners, laughed about at the gas station, shared like wildfire on every neighbour's phone. Maggie's husband, they said, and her daughter. Scandal has a way of travelling faster than truth ever could. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Frank once told me he loved me, and stirred a cup of cold coffee. Didn't feel joy, I didn't feel guilt, just stillness. Like my soul had finally stopped fighting itself. Then the phone rang. The caller ID read, "Coastal Hospital." A nurse's voice, soft but cautious, filled the line. "Mrs. Carter. Your husband and daughter have been admitted for minor injuries. They're asking for you." For a long moment, I said nothing. My eyes drifted to the window, to the burnt curtains, the smoke stains still marking the glass. Finally, I said, "I'll be there soon." When I arrived, the hospital smelled of antiseptic and whispers. Every nurse who passed me had that look, the look people give when they've already heard the story, but are too polite to say a word. At the reception, the young woman behind the desk swallowed hard before saying, "Room 204. They're both in there." I walked down the long hallway, my footsteps echoing softly against the linoleum. Through the glass panel in the door I could see them. Frank, pale and ashamed, his arm bandaged. Lily, sitting on the bed, her eyes swollen from crying, her hair tangled, her dignity gone. When I entered, the air froze. Lily's lips trembled. "Mom, please," her voice cracked. "I didn't mean—" I raised my hand gently. "Don't," I said. "Don't make excuses for something you chose." Frank tried to speak next. "Maggie, I don't," I repeated, my voice low, steady. I'm not here for apologies. I came because I still have something to give you. I placed 2 small tubes on the table beside the bed. Your nurse said you needed ointment for the burns, I explained softly. They'll help with the pain. Lily reached for one with shaking hands. Frank looked up, guilt swimming in his eyes. Maggie, you didn't have to, but I was already turning toward the door. You're right, I said. I didn't have to. As I walked out, I heard Lily whisper, "It stings." Then, louder, "It burns." A nurse rushed past me, calling for help. I didn't look back, because I already knew. Those tubes didn't contain ointment, just mustard, thick, yellow, harmless. And poetic. Outside, sunlight poured through the glass windows of the lobby, and for the first time it didn't feel cold. By noon, the whole town had seen the hospital video. Someone had recorded the shouting. Someone always does. And just like that, the humiliation doubled. The mighty Frank Carter and the once sweet Lily, the talk of the town, the lesson whispered to every gossiping neighbour. That afternoon, Eddie came by the shop. He didn't knock. He just stood at the doorway, his uniform still on, his face unreadable. "Mom," he said quietly. The word caught me by surprise. He'd never called me that before. Not once in all the years Frank and I were married. He stepped closer. I know what you did. I set down the bouquet I'd been wrapping and met his gaze. Do you hate me for it? He shook his head slowly. No, I think I understand. He placed an envelope on the counter. Dad asked me to give this to you. Inside was a note, written in Frank's familiar handwriting. Forgive me. Please. I'll sign whatever you want. I looked up at Eddie. Did he? He nodded. He knows it's over. He's leaving town. So is she. I exhaled, long and slow. Good, I said. Then give him this. I handed him another envelope, inside. The divorce papers, already signed by me. Eddie took it silently. But before turning away, he said something that stayed with me. Mom, you didn't just burn them. You burned every lie they ever told, and somehow, I think, you saved us all. When he left, I stood in the middle of the shop, surrounded by the smell of fresh roses and vanilla candles. Customers came and went, their smiles soft, their eyes kind. Maggie, you're stronger than all of us, one woman said. You showed the world that karma still works. I smiled politely, but deep inside, I knew this wasn't about karma. It was about peace, and peace rarely comes without fire. Later that evening, I closed the shop early. Outside, the air was cool, the sea calm again. I walked past the bakery, past the post office, and stopped by the small bench near the harbour. Eddie was there, staring at the water, his helmet beside him. He didn't say a word when I sat next to him. We just watched the waves roll in, silver under the moonlight. After a while he spoke quietly. Are you okay? I thought about it. For the first time in months, my answer felt true. Yes, I said. I am. He smiled faintly. I'll help you with the shop tomorrow. And just like that, something fragile, something almost lost, as began to heal. That night, as I locked the door and turned off the lights, I realized the truth. You can't unlove someone who once mattered, but you can stop letting their poison grow in your garden. And for me, the garden had finally started to bloom again. It's strange how silence can feel different after everything burns. Before, it felt heavy, suffocating. Now it feels clean, free. Weeks passed after the fire, and life somehow found its rhythm again. The gossip faded, like smoke blown away by the wind. People stopped whispering when I walked by. Some even smiled, like they were proud of me, as if my pain had become their inspiration. The shop was busier than ever. Maybe people were drawn to the story, or maybe they just wanted to buy a little piece of strength. Either way, the bell over the door never stopped ringing. "Mrs. Carter, your roses smell divine today," one customer said. I smiled, handing her the bouquet. "They're grown with a bit of pain," I replied softly, "and a lot of peace." Eddie came every morning now. He'd quit the fire department, saying he needed a break from saving others. "I think it's time I save something beautiful instead," he told me, rolling up his sleeves to help arrange flowers. He wasn't my blood, but he'd become my son in every way that mattered. We didn't talk much about that night. We didn't have to. Sometimes, understanding doesn't need words. It blooms in the quiet things. Fresh coffee waiting on the counter, the sound of scissors snipping stems, the way he'd glance at me before flipping the open sign each morning. One afternoon, as we prepared an order for a wedding, Eddie asked, "Do you ever miss him?" I paused, my hands still among the white lilies. "Missing someone and wanting them back," I said, "are two very different things." He nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. Then he smiled faintly. "I think Dad would hate seeing how well you're doing." I laughed, a real laugh this time. "Then I guess I'm finally winning." The days grew warmer, and the shop window filled with colour again. Tulips, daisies, orchids, every shade of forgiveness. Customers often asked if I'd renamed the shop after reopening. I had. The new sign read, "Bloom Again Flowers," because that's exactly what I'd done. Every morning, I'd unlock the door, inhale the scent of fresh petals, and think, maybe this is what survival smells like. The old life, the one with lies and loneliness, had burned down completely. And out of those ashes, something stronger had taken root. Sometimes when I watered the plants near the window, I'd catch a glimpse of Frank's old car driving by. He never stopped. He didn't dare. I heard from the bank that he'd sold his business and left town. As for Lily, she'd moved to another state. No one had seen her since, and I didn't wish her harm. I'd already given her the kindest punishment there is, a lifetime to live with herself. One Sunday, I went to the pier. The sea was calm, the gulls floating like ghosts above the water. I brought a single rose and tossed it into the tide. "For what was lost," I whispered, "and for what was found." When I returned home, Eddie was waiting at the shop. He'd painted something on the back wall, a mural of flowers rising from fire. Underneath, he'd written in simple white letters, "From pain we grow." I stood there for a long time, staring at it. It wasn't just beautiful, it was truth. As the evening sun poured through the glass, turning the petals gold, I realised something. You can't always choose what happens to you, but you can choose what grows from it, and forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't letting them win. It's letting yourself breathe again. That night, Eddie locked the door and handed me a cup of tea. "Mum," he said softly, "I'm proud of you." The word mum felt warm, like sunlight on my skin. Maybe this quiet moment was the real ending I'd been waiting for. Later, I sat by the window, watching the waves shimmer under the moon. Somewhere in the distance, a faint siren wailed, not a cry for help this time, but a reminder that life goes on, that healing makes noise too, a softer kind, and as I closed my eyes, I smiled, because even though my story had been born in betrayal, it was ending in bloom. If this story touched your heart, remember, no matter how broken things seem, something beautiful can still grow from it. Subscribe to our channel. because there are more stories like this of heartbreak, truth, and the quiet strength that follows. Sometimes, life falls apart so that something stronger can finally take its place. And if you're still listening, maybe this story was meant for you. Sometimes, the deepest pain doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people we once called home. What Maggie went through wasn't just betrayal. It was a lifetime of trust breaking in silence. 40 years of love, loyalty, and forgiveness, shattered in one cruel truth. But she didn't let the betrayal define her. She faced it. She burned the lies down to their roots. And from those ashes she built peace. You see, in my work as a family therapist, I've met many people like Maggie, women and men who spent their lives holding families together that were already broken. And when the truth finally surfaced, they thought they'd never breathe again. But pain has a strange way of purifying us. It strips away everything false, until only what's real can survive. Maggie's story reminds us of one simple truth. You can't heal in the same place that hurt you. Sometimes, you have to let the fire burn, not to destroy, but to make room for something new to grow. And maybe, just maybe, forgiveness isn't about letting others off the hook. It's about setting yourself free from the weight of their choices. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever stayed silent just to keep the peace, or if you've ever rebuilt yourself from the ground up, then Maggie's story is also your story, because survival doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. It sounds like a woman opening her shop again, like a son coming home, like a quiet morning after the storm. And if you're still listening right now, thank you. It means this story touched something in you, a memory, a wound, or maybe a small spark of hope. Here on When Family Breaks, we tell stories that aren't just about pain, but about the strength that rises after. Stories that remind us that being broken doesn't mean being finished. So, if you felt something today, if Maggie's strength spoke to you, leave a comment below. Tell us what part of her journey you related to most. Your story might just help someone else heal, and don't forget to subscribe, because next week, another story of truth, betrayal, and quiet redemption awaits you. Maybe it'll hurt. Maybe it'll heal. But it will remind you, you are not alone. Because even when family breaks, the heart still remembers how to bloom.